Hey everyone, I'm Lily, and welcome to part 4 of my Guilds of Ravnica Set review. I'm so excited for the set. But yeah, so this is the 4th installment, and now we're going to be actually jumping into looking at a lot of the multicolor cards in the set. So this video is going to be about Dimir and Golgari, although they're going to be mixed up together because separating them out would have been work, and I'm lazy. So you come together. That said, there's actually a lot of synergies between the Dimir and Golgari cards. Like, I could see a lot of the Golgari decks wanting to splash for some of the Dimir cards, because just Surveil is such a good enabler for, like, undergrowth stuff and graveyard shenanigans that the Golgari want to do. So, that said, the Dimir seem to be much more wanting to stick in their lane and, like, focusing on that, but just jumping right into it, first up we have Artful Takedown, which is 2 blue and a black for an instant. Either choose one or both. Most of the time I'll choose both, but you can either tap target creature, or target creature gets -2/-4 until end of turn. This is just honestly one of the best pieces of Dimir removal you're gonna get. And the fact that it's like -2/-4 will kill most things, and if not, like, it'll allow you to win in combat if you have to use it as a combat trick. But just being able to, like, beginning of their, like, upkeep, okay, kill one of your things, tap it down so you can't, like, do, like, attack me or stuff like that. Just, like, kind of like one of those tempo plays that Dimir want to do. Just makes this a really good card, and honestly, the fact that it's such good removal that it's probably one of those things that if you're lacking on removals, definitely want to splash for in Golgari or Izzet. If you can get, like, the guild gates and some stuff to work on that. Because it's such a good payoff. Next up is Assassin's Trophy, which is black-green for an instant. Destroy target permanent an opponent controls. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle their library. This is a bad card. I don't really think it's going to see any play in any format. It's also not going to be worth anything, so you should really just pass it. Yeah, no, it's trash. Don't play this card. Pass them to me. Yeah, just pass them to me. But in all reality, it's unconditional removal for 2 mana. Like, it ramps them, but honestly, the things you're going to hit with Assassin's Trophy is going to be by the time that ramping them isn't an issue. Obviously, you're not Assassin's Trophying their 2-drop, and you'll take this unless you're at a Pro Tour because it's worth a lot of money. Next up is Charnel Troll, which is 1 black-green for a 4/4 with trample. Okay, I'm interested in that. But at the beginning of your upkeep, exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on Charnel Troll. Otherwise, sacrifice it. And you may pay black and a green to discard a creature card and put a +1/+1 counter on it. So it requires continually, like, feeding it and things like that. So the idea is that, like, oh, you play this on 3, on 4, I discard some creatures to, like, pump it up and start swinging in and everything. But I actually don't think this is very good. Like, if you watch the pre-release, like, this did a lot of work. The thing is that if they have any sort of removal, like, if this gets, like, if you know that your opponent has very little removal, I think this can be a great plan. But the thing is that to really get this engine going, you have to pretty much pitch all of your creatures, which is really the kind of things that you want to be doing to, like, get it going. And you have to be exiling creature cards from your graveyard, which is, like, the opposite of what the Golgari want to be doing, because it, like, then hinders all of the other Golgari mechanics that want things in the yard. And I could definitely see this being like, okay, turn 3, play this, put down things, discard creature, okay, swing in for 6, okay, hit you for 6, then tap, kill this thing, now you're down 2 creatures, and also spent 2 of your 5 mana on this total, and I think it's fine, but I think it's really counterintuitive, and if you run out of gas, the fact that you just lose it is really not ideal. So I'm not really huge on Charnel Troll. I would be more into it if there was actually more enablers for the Golgari stuff. But the fact is that the Golgari stuff has a lot of cool stuff with Undergrowth, but the Golgari doesn't really have good ways of filling their graveyard. There's a few cards that we'll talk about later on, but most of the good ones are not super easy to get. They're not commons and stuff, so you're not going to be having a full graveyard besides things that go to the yard naturally, or the odd Surveil card you pick up. So I'm not big on Charnel Troll, although I could see myself being wrong. Dark Blade Agent. It is 1 blue and a black for 2/3, with as long as you surveil this turn, it has Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. Okay, this is one of those ones where, okay, 2/3 for 3, you could do worse, but it's not great. But it's one that if you have the Surveil shell and you have the Surveil enablers and you can consistently, like if you could surveil every turn and make sure that this is on and ready to go, this would be a great card. Like, no one wants to trade with a 2/3, like, everything, and it can, like, game, you can, like, hold it back, especially if you have any of the creatures that can, like, activate it ability for surveil. But if you don't have those enablers, I think it's just not great. Like, its payoff is fine, but it's not a reason to be in the surveil deck. It's just kind of like, oh, hey, this is, like, a decent creature if I am. So that's where I am on it. Like, I feel just way too much of the time this is going to just be a 2/3 for 3. Yeah. It's like, obviously if it instant speed stuff to like trick them into like being like, oh, I have my Death Touch creature and whatnot like that, but let's be honest, like, it's okay. And so much of the surveil stuff is either stapled onto creatures, like, it's not all like instant speed stuff that we've seen, so. Now, talking about surveil payoffs, Dimir's Spybug, which is blue and a black for a 1/1 with flying and menace, and whenever you surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on it. This is a surveil payoff that I like, because it gives all of your surveils like long-term benefits, and like, even if you surveil once with this thing, this became a 2/2 flying menace for 2, which is great. And this is just one of those cards that really is one of the best rewards for being in that surveil deck at not rare. And yeah, no, this thing I can easily see like growing out of control very quickly. It having menace makes it hard to block and things like that, so I really do like surveil Spybug, even if I hate bugs. Next up is Disinformation Campaign. It's 1 blue and a black for an enchantment. When this enters the battlefield, you may draw a card, and each opponent discards a card. Whenever you surveil, return Disinformation Campaign to its owner's hand. Okay, so this is a few things going on. One, okay, if it was just 3 mana, draw a card, your opponent discard a card, I'm not super into that. That said, like, it's a lot of mana, but like this could definitely be like a card value engine over time. So I think if you, like, how many times you have to cast this before you like it, and also you don't want more than one of these in your deck, but I mean that's a fair source of like repeatable hand attack as well as like card draw and stuff like that. That said, if you have a Disinformation Campaign out, your opponent like knows that you might be replaying it, so then all of a sudden discard is less good when your opponent sees it coming. I actually don't really know how I feel about this. I feel if it's a format that ends up being more slow, but if it's any, like, this could be really good as kind of like a long-term like engine, but I feel, especially if with any repeatable surveil effects on creatures, but I could, if this format is fast or even like very mid-rangey, I just feel that this is way too grindy and slow, because that is a lot of mana you're putting into it for not that much of an effect, and yeah. So I'm on the fence about Disinformation Campaign. Next up is Erstwhile Trooper, which is a 1 black red green red green for a 2/2. So it's a 3-mana 2/2. I'm not super into that, but you can discard a creature to give it +2/+2 and trample until end of turn. But you can only activate that once each turn. I'm glad it doesn't say only activate this as a sorcery, because I'd make it so bad. But this one's nice, and like why I like effects like this, because I think very rarely will you actually be discarding creature cards to that, because that's just not the best value. Like obviously in the Golgari deck, like you do get value from having your creatures in the yard, but normally you want to cast them and put them in there. But the main benefit of this is just threat of activation. Unlike similar cards that are like, oh, discard like an instant or sorcery or like a historic card or things like that, where it's like, it's a very narrow type. It's like, you're playing limited deck, you're gonna have lots of creatures. Like, your opponent has to assume that you have a creature in your hand that you could pitch. And that makes them have to play around this kind of being a 4/4. So, which means I think it's not amazing, but I think it's just a solid card for that Golgari deck. Next up is a Trata the Silencer. It's 2 blue and a black for a 3/5 that cannot be blocked. If it was just that, 4 mana for a 3/5 that can't be blocked, I'm in. Like 4 mana 3/5, those are stats I'm interested. It blocks well, especially in this like slower, grindy Dimir deck, and the fact that it can't be blocked and just gets in 3 damage is great. But then, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, which is not hard, exile target creature that player controls and put a hit counter on that card. That player loses the game if they own 3 or more exiled cards with hit counters on them. Trata's owner shuffles a Trata into their library. So, obviously it sucks that you can't just use this as a repeatable beater and just like knock them out and like get them to 0. But the fact that it's a 4 mana 3/5, which if you need to hang back and block, it blocks wonderfully. But the fact that you can turn it sideways, it can't be blocked, it gets in, does 3 damage to them, and you get to just exile a creature they have. That's just so much value. It is unfortunate they have to shuffle it back in your library, and I think there could be a situation where it's like you are better off just leaving her behind and to hold back stuff. But a lot of the time, this is just going to get so much done. And honestly, I don't bank on winning via the ult win condition of getting in with her 3 times, because it's just logically, like, sensibly, you're not going to draw her that many times unless you're extremely lucky to be able to get in. And by that time, a Trata's done 9 damage to them, and it's probably been a lot of turns, and if you haven't done 11 damage to them to just have them dead normally, you really have not been aggressive. So just ignore the whole that player loses the game clause, and just ignore that. But even then, you just got such a great, just like creature all around. Yeah. Next up is Glow Spore Shaman. It is black-green for a 3/1 elf shaman, and when it enters the battlefield, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. You may put a land card from your graveyard on top of your library. You know me, I'm not a big fan of 3/1s for 2, if you've watched any of my previous ones. But you know what? Golgari, like I said before, doesn't actually have that many good enablers for undergrowth. But this one actually is a real nice enabler for that. Like, it mills 3 on your 2-drop, which is kind of when you want to be doing that. A 3/1's respectable body that will usually, probably in your Golgari deck, just trade up and then go to your graveyard, where the Golgari deck kind of wants it. It fills your own graveyard. And the fact that you get to put a land from your graveyard on top of your library, so it like sets up your next land draw. Like, if you only have if you only had like a 3-lander hand or something, and you want to make sure you enable those land drops, it'll like help keep you there and not like help give you some card selection if you need it. That all around, I think Glow Spore Shaman is going to be a premium commodity in the Golgari deck. The other decks don't really want to splash for it, but which is kind of good because the Golgari need it. Okay, the first one, this is our first like there's a cycle of uncommons that require double symbols of each one, so they're really not splashable, and you're going to want to have like some gates and maybe some lockets in your guild's colors to play them, but most of them are very good. So the first one is Golgari Finebroker, which is black, black, green, green, 4/3/4. Okay, 4 mana 3/4. I mean, that's hard to cast, but 4 mana 3/4. I'm happy with that. That's not a bad rate. It's a little bit below rate, but 4 mana 3/4 still blocks a lot of stuff. When it enters the battlefield, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. I'm in. Like, it's a decent body, and like it's not that below rate, and essentially it kind of draws a card of your choice from your graveyard. And the restrictive casting cost, like, it's one of those cards that's like, if it's a restrictive casting card like this, like, if the card isn't good on turn 4, is like only good on turn 4 and it gets worse as the game goes on, then it's not as good because you might be stuck like, oh no, I only have 1 black and I can't cast this thing. But the fact is that, like, late game, this thing is still good because you're recurring summoning into your hand. Like, if this was like a Boros beatdown creature that, like, you really need this on turn 4, otherwise it's just not as that great. But the fact is that because it is good in almost all stages of the game, honestly, it's probably the worst on turn 4. So, yeah, no, but Finebroker. Findbroker is a fine card. This is next to the first, the guild mages. These are all 2 mana tutus with upside. Honestly, most of them are worth running, just period, if you're in those colors. Some of them are better than others, but for the most part, you can't go wrong. Like, their baseline is good. But this is House Guild Mage, which is just blue and a black for a 2/2, and they usually have 2 activated abilities that do, like, kind of different things. This first one is 1 and a blue, tap it. Target creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, so you can, like, kind of keep something just like ice down if you need to, so it, like, functions as semi-removal. Or you can pay 2 and a black to surveil 2. This thing is great. The fact that it is removal, like, it does kind of, it's not like quite an icy manipulator, but the fact that it just, like, instancing surveil, which Dimir decks want, and Golgari decks want, and honestly also the Is It deck kind of wants, and the fact that otherwise it's like situational, like, removal for when you need it, and, like, helps, like, control the game. This is a great one, and honestly also worth splashing for. So, and good at all stages of the game too. Like, a 2-drop that is good in the late game and the early game is truly a good thing that you want to have. You can set up future draws. It's just like, this is everything I want from a guild mage. Next up is a Zonie, Thousand-Eyed. It is 2 black, black, green, green for a 2/3. So a 6 mana 2/3 with Undergrowth. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 black and green insect token for each creature in your graveyard. And you can pay black and a green, sacrifice another creature to gain 1 life and draw a card. This is one that you really need to have the enablers. Like, 6 mana 2/3 is bad. And I would say you'd probably want at least 3 things in your graveyard before you want to be casting this. And if you got that, that's fine, but it's like, it's a very restrictive casting cost, and you need the enablers to work. Like, granted, if you can get like 5 creatures in your graveyard and things like, or more, and you can cast this, you could go, all of a sudden you have a huge swarm of things, you can start sacrificing them for, like, cards and things like that, then obviously, like, that's great. But if you don't have the shell, it's just not going to be that good. That said, it is double cost of each of Golgari, so you wouldn't be splashing for this anyway, but you do need to have those Undergrowth enablers, which, like I've said before, are kind of lacking for Golgari. Next up is Lazav, the Multifarious. It is blue, black for a legendary shapeshifter that's a 1/3. When it enters the battlefield, surveil 1. Okay, 2 mana 1/3 that surveils 1. Honestly, that just seems like a decent creature that Dimir would run. But you may also pay X. And Livia, the Multifarious, becomes a copy of target card in your graveyard with converted mana cost X. Except its name is Livia, the Multifarious. It's legendary in addition to its other types, and it has this ability. So, like, early game, it comes down as just like a respectable 2-drop. But then the fact that it can just turn into any of your other creatures that die or get surveilled into it later on is just great, and like can change into whatever you need it to be. Just makes it real flexible. Like it's one of those 2-drops that is good both early and late game. And it's just a real solid creature. Interesting design too. Next up is Mnemonic Betrayal, which is 1 blue and a green for sorcery. Exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. You may cast those cards this turn and may spend mana of any type to cast those spells. At the beginning of the next end step, if any of those cards remain exiled, return it to their owner's graveyard. Exile Mnemonic Betrayal. So it's kind of like Yawgmoth's Will for your opponent's graveyards. Thing is, you still have to pay mana for it. It only lasts 1 turn. You're paying 3 mana for this, so honestly, you're not going to be able to cast any either like big bombs or anything. Honestly, most of the time, you're just going to cast this when you're on like 6 or 7 mana, cast a removal spell or an efficient creature from the graveyard, and it'll be fine. I'm not big on this card. Like, I think it's good, and if you get it, like, I'd play it, but I would not place high value on this card. It's just so slow and requires you to have other mana and things like that to have it work well, and you're getting a CMC thing that's like at most like 3 less than the amount of mana you have, and yeah, I think it's fine, but it's nothing amazing. And the fact that it also is like very much reliant on what your opponent has in their graveyard just makes it so situational. Like, yes, there's going to be situations where this is going to be really good, but for the vast majority of times it's just way too situational, and yeah. Next up is Molder Hulk. It is 7 black-green for a 6/6, but with Undergrowth, and it costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. And when you're battlefield, return target land card from your graveyard to your battlefield. So it's if you have 3 creatures in your graveyard, which honestly by turn 6, if you have the stuff to like do this, like in the Golgari deck, you got yourself a 6/6 for 6, and that also kind of ramped you. Yeah, I don't mind this. Like, it's a good body. 6/6s are nice and big, and if you have some of the guys that like help self-mill you and can get this out early, like turn 5, this is just like real great. I gotta say though, I think most of the time I would prefer a Colossal Dreadmaw. Just like having Trample on a 6/6 is so great, and by the time you're casting this, you're usually not needing another land on the battlefield. So I think this is fine, and it's like not a bad like top end for the Golgari deck, but Wizards, you really need to reprint Colossal Dreadmaw, because honestly, most of the times where this would be good, I'd prefer just to have a Colossal Dreadmaw. Next up is Night Veil Predator. This is kind of the uncommon that's double costed for Dimir, and it's blue, black for a flying, death touch, hexproof 3/3. Okay, so 4 mana, 3/3 flying, death touch. I'm into that, and it also has hexproof, so it's like pretty much always going to trade for something if you need to. If not, it's just like 3-powered like attacker in the air. And again, like, it's heavy restrictive cost. How good is it if I don't have it on turn 4 and I get stripped on mana and it's not coming out turn 6? This is still good in the late game. Like, honestly, Death Touchers are good really at any point in the game. And this is both a finisher, it's both defensive, it dissuades attacks, it's hexproof, so like that helps it there. It looks cool. So yeah, no, just real solid. Obviously, you're not splashing with this, but good payoff for the Dimir deck. Next up is Notion Rain. It is 1 blue and a black for sorcery. Surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. Notion Rain does 2 damage to you. So it's kind of like it's Read the Bones, but with Surveil, and requires blue. And yeah, it's just real good. Like, I could see this being like splashing for this, and like the Dimir deck obviously really wants this. I could see the Golgari deck really wanting this. Even the Isa deck wanting it, because they want instants and sorceries. Like, this is just one of the best card draw spells in the format. So, yeah, not much to say, but like, fills your graveyard if you need that. It draws you cards, gives you card selection. It's just real good. Read the Bones is a good card. Next up, Akron Assassin. It is a 1 black and a green for a 1/1 Death Touch. With all creatures must block Akron Assassin, do so. I did not read that sentence right, but it's a prize unicorn, so everything that can block it must block it. This is just great. Like, this is a removal spell. Like, it's both a removal spell and also letting all your creatures through. Like, it swings and be like, oh no, look at me. While all of your other big stuff, like, gets in and, like, it smashes their face, which is important because they don't have trample because I'm not a Colossal Dreadmaw. But yeah, no, it's just real good. And then you pretty much get your pickings of which creature it kills, like, what creature of your opponent's, like, you get to kill. I mean, defensively, it still does a real good job of blocking whatever comes its way, and yeah, the fact that it both trades for any creature you want and gets damage through. Yeah, no. Akron Assassin, real nice. Next up is Rhizome Lurcher, which is 2 black and a green for a 2/2 that enters battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So we had like the 4-mana one that had haste and like mono green, that was like that, but it was a 0/0. This one I like a lot more. Like, it doesn't have haste, it requires another color, but just having that base 2 power makes it so much easier to like be on curve. Like, turn 4 having 2 creatures in your graveyard is a lot easier than turn 4 having 4 creatures in your graveyard. And anything beyond that is just gravy. Like, it scales well with the game, it looks cool, like it has cool antlers and stuff, so yeah. It's just an efficient 4-drop for the Golgari deck. Alright, here's the Golgari Guild Mage. It's the Swarm Guild Mage, which is black-green for 2/2, obviously because it's a Guild Mage. But you may pay 5 and tap it, or 4 and black, to give all your creatures +1/+0 in menace until end of turn. Or you may pay 1 green and tap it to gain 2 life. Okay, this one is significantly less exciting than the Dimir one, but that first ability is not a bad, like, kind of like finisher to just like get in a big attack if you need to. Like, pay a bunch of mana, get in a big attack. It's really hard to block your creatures. They're a little bit bigger. Like, that said, honestly, I feel the Swarm Guild Mage is honestly best in splashing for it in like the Celestia deck, because that ability is just so much better if you just have like a bunch of tokens, like the 1/1 lifelink tokens. Like, that is an amazing ability with lifelink tokens, and I kind of wanted to have it with that. Gain 2 life isn't great, but that said, it is just a 2/2 for 2, and if you have spare mana and just holding this up, just like being able to like spend your mana, gain 2 life every turn, if you have nothing better to do, like, that adds up and can give you a nice buffer, especially if it ends up being a very aggressive format with the Boros. So yeah, no, it's definitely not like, oh, you want to splash for this, like the House Guild Mage, but it's respectable in that Golgari deck, and I would be interested in it for if I was playing Celestia as well. Next up is Thief of Sanity, which is 1 blue and a black for a 2/2 with flying. And whenever it deals common damage to player, look at the top 3 cards of that player's library. Exile one of them face down, then put the rest in their graveyard. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may look at it, and you may cast it, and you may spend mana as though if it was any mana of any type to cast that spell. So it's kind of like, okay, it's a 3 mana 2/2, so it's a Windrake that when it deals combat damage to a player, you get to impulse their deck. Not impulse, strategic planning, because it goes into the graveyard. Honestly, that's real good. Like, it's kind of like you draw a card, but you get better selection. It's from their deck. That's still not bad at all. You get to, like, you know, for color screwed when it comes to casting them. So if they have, like, the double costed, like, gold cards, like, it helps there. But what, like, all that is fine and dandy and great. The one downside is if they are a Golgari or is a deck that gets value for having things in your graveyard, you are filling up their graveyard for them. So if, like, they are really heavy on one of those themes, I could see sideboarding it out. Because otherwise you gotta just be real careful about what you're just essentially enabling for their deck. But other than that, it's just a real good, like, Windrakes are fine, and if you also get to essentially draw a card, it's also fine, and the sanity doesn't have to be on the battlefield to still cast it. Next up is Fodder, which is blue-black for sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. Surveil 1. So these kind of like duress, like this is more of like a Thoughtseize, effects. Like, they're really good on 1 mana, but for the most part you want to be doing other things if you're 2-drop slot. That said, the Surveil 1 there, like, if you're a Dimir deck that cares about Surveil and has some of the payoffs, I could see playing this. Although I'm not super high on effects like this, in Limited. But yeah, definitely bring it in if they also have if you know they have a threat that you can't deal with. But if you're not really getting extra value out of that Surveil, I wouldn't really bother with this too much. Next up is Undercity Uprising, which is honestly, I think, is a good contender for the largest difference in the set between rad art and quality of the card. It's 2 black and a green for sorcery. Creatures you control gain Death Touch until end of turn. Then, target creature may fights target creature you don't control. So you give all your stuff Death Touch, and then you have 1 creature fight it. So, okay. Giving all your creatures Death Touch at sorcery speed isn't that useful. If this was an instant, I'd be so much more into this. But giving all your creatures Death Touch isn't super useful. But it's useful for the fight, so you'd be like, oh, but then you can, like, trade off a creature to, like, fight another creature and everything. But then you're paying 4 mana for a Bone Splinters. Bone Splinters, which is an okay card at best. And you're paying a 4 mana multicolored card for that. That's not great. If you already have creatures that don't die when fighting, for the most part, you just paid 4 mana on a gold card for a Prey Upon. This is a bad card. This is just like, if you need removal, if you absolutely have nothing in your deck for removal, this is passable. But outside of those desperate circumstances, I think this card is garbage. Yeah. It's cool art though. Good Raska art. Showing off arms. She's very sexy. Her snakes look really good today. Next up is Underrealm Lich, which is 3 black and a green for 4/3. If you would draw a card, instead look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put 1 in your hand and the rest into the graveyard. And you may pay 4 life to give it indestructible and tap it. This is a very good card. Amazing card selection. It fills your graveyard for the Golgari decks, and if you're splashing, or no, isn't one splash for this, but It just gives you great card advantage. It's a 4/3 guy that you can like pay life to give it indestructible if you need to keep it around. It does run the inherent risk of milling yourself out, which is a very real possibility in Limited, which, well, this thing guy actually does prevent you from losing the game while he's on the battlefield from like drawing from an empty library because of replacement effects and all that. You're not going to win the game if you have no more cards to draw. Like, at that point, your board stays what it is, and you're going to be in a tricky situation at that point. But honestly, Underrealm Lich is just really good. Really good. And yeah, no, it's one of the best enablers for the Golgari, and given the fact that a lot of the Golgari stuff doesn't have that much enablers, like this just makes all your Golgari stuff so good and gives you so much card selection, and yeah. No, I really like Underrealm Lich, and it does just a lot of work. Next up is Unmoored Eco. It's 1 blue, black, 4 sorcery. Choose a card name, search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for up to 4 cards of that name, and exile them. Then they shuffle their library, and draws a card for each card exiled from their hand this way. This is a card for Constructed. Don't blame this Limited. It's bad. Next up is Raska, Golgari Queen. It is 2 black-green for a foreign loyalty planeswalker. You may +2 to, and you may sacrifice another permanent. If you do, gain 1 life and draw a card. -3, destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana 3 or less. -9, which you really shouldn't pay attention to, but you get an emblem with whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. Realistically, you can ignore the alt. This planeswalker is fine. The thing is that Golgari hasn't shown itself to be really good at making tokens. Like, the only thing that makes tokens is Zonie. So honestly, I think Vraska's best place is like actually splashing for it within a Selesnya deck with tokens. Because then, like, the +2 becomes so much better, because, like, I make all these, like, 1/1 lifelink tokens, and now I can sacrifice them to, like, gain life and draw cards and get this card advantage. Otherwise, it's just going to turn into kind of like a clock where you can kill small things, because for the Golgari deck, you're having to sacrifice real permanents. Like, sure, like, late game, you can sacrifice unneeded lands and things like that, but, yeah, like, it's fine. I think it's playable, but it's nothing amazing when it comes to a planeswalker. So, for Limit, I should say, like, just the Golgari archetype just doesn't support what she's trying to do that well. So, yeah, I mean, it will sometimes be a 4-mana destroy target permanent with mana cost 3 or less, and sometimes that'll be worth it, but yeah, no, it's just fine. Next is Pitiless Gorgon. This is 1 black-green, black-green. One thing to remember about these is that these aren't strictly black-green cards. You can play this perfectly fine in a Selesnya deck. You can play this perfectly fine in a Dimir deck, and you don't have to worry about splashing. But it's just a 2/2 with Death Touch, which I think is a fine card. It's just fine. 2/2 with Death Touch, like, I mean, it's 3 mana, 3 mana 2/2 is not great, but Death Touch creatures are generally good, they block well, and like, this is just, it's a fine 3-drop, it's nothing exciting. I mean, she's hot, but, yeah. Next up is Whisper Agent, which is 1 Dimir, so either blue, black. So this can either go into a Izzet deck, a Dimir deck, or a Golgari deck, no problem. But it's a 3/2 with Flash, and when it enters battlefield, Surveil 1. Hired Blade was a fine card in the last recent format, and giving it Surveil 1, honestly, is just extra value. Like, all the colors that have access to this want to surveil for, is it for Jumpstart, Golgari for Undergrowth, and, well, Dimir for surveilling. And yeah, no, that's about all I have to say. That just is real nice it's just a solid creature. Like, oftentimes you'll be able to just ambush someone, surveil, trade this off, so you get, like, you're actually up a little more value and things like that, so. Alrighty. We're up to the hard-to-read cards. These are split cards. You should know, like the hybrid mana cards, like, each of these has a hybrid mana side that, I will mention if, like, it's worth playing just for the hybrid mana side if you are in those colors. But essentially you get to cast one of the modes when you cast it. So this first one is Connive and Concoct. Connive is a 4-mana sorcery, so 2 Dimir, and you get to gain control of target creature with power 2 or less. I mean, it's a 4-mana removal spell. Like, that's not bad. I'll play that. You also just then hit their creature. Sure, it only hits small creatures, but I mean, it's kind of like a mind control effect. And, you know, I'd play that even if I couldn't cast the Concoct side. I think that's a perfectly fine spell to cast. Like, maybe sideboard out against you notice there's not a lot of, like, targets for it. But, especially considering that both the Selesny and Boros decks, like, the two, like, the white, green, and red decks, like, want small powered creatures to either convoke or mentor. The fact that they want, those are the colors that usually have the big creatures that can't be stolen. The fact that they want those kind of creatures makes that even better. And then Concoct is 3 blue-black for Surveil 3, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is any creature card. Like, this is honestly just such a good, get to revive something. Also, Surveil 3 is a lot of card advantage, or card selection, I should say. And you can put them in your graveyard if you need to like, fill up your yard and whatnot. And honestly, Connive and Concoct is one of those I'd also go out of my way kind of to splash for. Also, these are a lot less risk to splash for, because it's like, okay, I'm playing an Izzet deck and I can't find my black source for Concoct. I can still cast Connive, so it's a little bit less risk than splashing for other cards in. But this one is just a real solid piece of potato. I don't know what I'm saying. Next up is Discovery and Dispersal. Discovery is a 1 Dimir for a sorcery. Surveil 2, then draw a card. Yeah, that's fine. Like, it's kind of like a slightly better opt. And if you care about Surveil, that's great. If you want to fill up your graveyard, that's also great. Because, like I said, all 3 of the factions that have access to blue or black mana want surveilling, so that's nice. And Dispersal is 3 blue-black for an instant. For each opponent returns a non-land permanent they control with the highest converted mana cost among permanents they control to its owner's hand, then discards a card. So kind of like, you don't get to choose what they get, but it's kind of like a Denrova horror-like effect. And normally you want to balance the thing with the highest CMC to their hand. And honestly, that's an effect that I wouldn't splash for, but is really good too. Honestly, overall, just both sides are useful in their own situations, and no, I'm into this. Next is Find and Finality. Find is Golgari, and you could return 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. We've seen this effect a lot lately in Limited, but honestly, most of the time the going rate's been 3 mana for an effect like that, and those cards are often just perfectly fine, and getting it for 2 mana on a split card, I'm into that. That's not bad. And then Finality, which is 4 black-green. You may put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature you control. Then all creatures get -4/-4 until end of turn. So you get to like pump up one creature really big or pump another creature above the threshold and then kind of wipe the board. Like -4/-4 kills a lot of stuff. And I like board wipes in Limited. Like, this is just a hoser against the board, almost actually all the colors of decks. Like, the only things that this isn't going to kill is like, it'd be like big dumb Selesnya Convoke creatures. But yeah, no. I think I'm real into Find a Finality. Like, the fact that Find is just a solid card, and Finality, which often can be a very situational card, and when you don't need that kind of, you're not in a situation where Finality is good, Find is there, and I'm into that. And next is Status and Statue. Status is a Golgari for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+1 and Death Touch until end turn. It's a fine combat trick. It's nothing great, but it's a fine combat trick. Statue is a 2 black-green for an instant. Destroy target artifact, creature, or enchantment. So it's kind of like a more, And that's just like a premium removal spell. This one is also a very good one. And also kind of a removal spell, like, I would be interested in maybe splashing for if I need removal. Because like I said, like, you can get Guild Gates really easy, and like splashing isn't that hard. And they did design this set to be, I was reading like a thread on Twitter today, but one of the designers, I forget who, said that they kind of designed the set to be that at a given pod to have support for 5 players for each of the guild and 3 people kind of playing 3 color. So there definitely is like a lot. It was made with kind of splashing into 3 colors like in mind. So that is an option for you, and don't be hesitant to do so in the set, because there is a lot of support and a lot of payoffs for it. Well, that is it for this episode. Next episode we'll be talking about Boros and Izzet. But until then, let me know what you think. If you disagree with any of my analysis of any of the things, I want to get better at this, just like all of you, and I hope you're enjoying the series, and I hope you all have a wonderful night, and may your story smile upon you.